You really thought you were in remission? Just because you beat a team that's most famous for their ice cream and their cheese? You must have forgotten that being a Vols fan is a terminal diagnosis that we all share. And this is the Volatile Podcast. I'm Mac Williams, and tonight I'm joined by my good friends Nick Duncan and Jeff Wright. Nick, how are we doing, bud?
Not as good as I was last week.
Yeah, I feel that. Jeff, what about you, man?
I'm pretty interested in the new world of basketball we're living in. I do feel bad for you guys, man. I wasn't quite ready to drink the Kool-Aid the way y'all were. And
I'm still drinking it.
Yeah, I just think maybe Mississippi State's not a good baseball team.
I don't know that that's true, but I definitely think their baby brother out there, all you Mississippi State fans.
Oh, wait, I said Mississippi. I meant Mississippi State. I think Mississippi State might not be good. And
No,
gave
they're
us
good.
false hope. Yeah.
They're good.
Okay.
But I do think they're a baby
to-
brother. I do think they're a baby brother, though. I mean, not in baseball traditionally, but I mean, Ole Miss is king of Mississippi, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
I defer. I just don't know that this baseball team is very good, and I don't know if Mississippi State's very good. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, I definitely don't know if our baseball team's very. I feel more confident that Mississippi State's good than I do we're good. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Even though we beat them, but
that's fair.
But so let's get to latest news. Let's start with basketball. So we got some gone guys and we got some guys. The guys that are gone are Cade Phillips has officially announced that he is going to Texas A&M. And so he will be an Aggie next year, playing for Bucky McMillan, former Samford basketball coach, my alma mater. Bucky's a good coach. I think Cade will do well there. I think that'll be a good fit for him. So
because Cade's a really good player.
Nah, I wouldn't go that far.
Contrast it with Missouri.
I think
he's gone now, boys. He joined a cult. It's over.
Yeah, it is a cult. That's for sure. For sure. Amari Evans goes to Texas. I'm not really sure about that fit. I mean, Texas does like to play, kind of gritty, grinded out basketball. So that's probably a good fit, like style wise, for Amari Evans. But I don't know how good they'll actually be.
Finger in the eye to Reverend Barnes.
Yeah, that kind of sucks. And
where'd Ethan Berg go?
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, Ethan Berg has been sent to the promised land. He is now in Israel, if you will, and so
he is now part of the IDF. He is fighting Iranians.
Yeah, Ethan Berg.
You got me there, Mac.
That is an interesting decision to go back to Israel while they're fighting like a 7-front war. That is an interesting decision. It's a decision.
Hey, love your people, love your place, man. You got to respect it.
Yep.
I would not be going back to Israel. Let me put it that way. I would be.
Not your people, not your place.
I would be happily staying in Tennessee instead of going to Israel, but that's just me. Anyways, so those are the guys that are gone. We already knew 2 of the 3 of those guys were going to be gone, but now we know where they're going. The guys we got are Chris Washington Jr., 4-star, right? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
4-star?
Mm-hmm.
4-star out of Murfreesboro, commits to Tennessee this week. And then we also get Terrence Hill Jr. out of the transfer portal. Obviously 2 different players, 2 different play styles. Which guy are you more excited about? Jeff, go first.
Well, Terrence Hill.
Yeah.
He's an older player. He's going to contribute. I think Washington is like evidence that Barnes hasn't given up entirely on recruiting high school. But if he contributes this year in any significant way, I'll be really surprised. He's supposed to be physically further along than Nate was, but he's a 4-star. Right. He's like he's one of those tweener types that I actually don't care for. Height slots him at small forward, style slots him at power forward. I just don't love that build or whatever. But I have confidence that Rick Barnes knows how to use guys. I just think he'll be left in the cupboard.
Sounds like you're describing Grant Williams. That's all I could think of as you're going through this. And that Rick Barnes got more out of Grant Williams than anyone in Grant Williams' basketball career ever has.
Yeah, and if Chris Washington becomes Grant Williams, it will be like hitting the lottery. So from your lips to God's ears.
I mean, wasn't Grant a 3-star, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
So it's possible. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen the kid, so I don't know if
Wasn't Josiah Jordan James a 5-star?
Yeah, McDonald's All-American. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
So-
wasn't one of Grant or Admiral a 2-star? Wasn't one of them a 2-star?
It probably was Grant. I think Grant's only other offer was like Yale or something, right?
Yeah, it was Ivy League. I know that.
Dude, SEC Player of the Year. Dude, his story is crazy. It's crazy.
It is
as
wild.
good as he was.
It is wild. God loves Catan.
Yeah, I mean, it's evident that dude just took every single bit of coaching that Rick Barnes offered him and just got them just committed himself to doing what he was told to do, and it just paid off for him.
He's also just super smart. Like, he's clearly just a really smart guy. So
yeah, you wouldn't know it from watching his NBA career. He's kind of an idiot, but
he did have a long one though. That's the other thing. Like, he cashed a lot of NBA checks as a guy who wasn't doing that on physical prowess.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last bit of basketball news here, and this is probably, well, actually, we might have two things. I didn't write one down, but Nate Ament. So according to Kevin O'Connor, as of today, Nate Ament's representatives are split on whether he should go into the draft or stay in college. This is latest news, but not if you listen to the Volatile podcast. This is old news. Jeff, you brought it up last week that you thought there could be a good opportunity for Nate to stick around an extra year because of the contrast in how talented this year's draft class is and how lack of talented next year's draft class is. Jeff, what did you think when you saw that tweet and kind of shared it with us? Are you feeling more confident about him staying or the same? Or
yeah, I mean, it's one of those opportunities to get hurt again because now it seems like the national media is talking about it as a possibility. And I read actually that like Tennessee is considered at this point a top 11 team based on the roster they've put together for next year. This transfer portal class couldn't have gone better. If we're not top 10 already, I don't understand what it would take, but you would imagine adding Nate would push us up there. Juke Harris, I've read that North Carolina's out because of that NC State guy they took, and that Juke Harris is projected to go like 32nd. So I'm assuming
he's coming to college. He's going to play college again.
Yeah, it's either us or Michigan. We've got a real chance to get him. You had Juke Harris and Nate Ament. You're talking about like a super team.
Yeah, that's crazy, dude.
And if you got a super team, I mean, you know what will happen, right? Like Tennessee will break out into a fist fight at half court on the first game and everything will go to, or they'll have like a Marshall football team moment. I mean, you just know that's how it rolls with Tennessee, but you can't help but get excited about the prospect.
Yeah.
Fist fight in the Food City Center.
Right.
Clean up on aisle 12.
Yeah, or even something crazier like they beat up the women's basketball team or something and they're all suspended, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm excited. I'd be out of this world to think we put together basically the first college super team in the NIL portal era.
Yeah.
It just seems too good to be true.
Yeah. Speaking of fist fighting the women's basketball teams, James Pierce Jr. Anyways, let's move on. So,
oh gosh, he's going to get drafted next week.
Oh wait, are we recording? No, I'm just kidding. I'm excited, man. I mean, this is like, you were all over it, Jeff, and yeah, I think you're right that this is a chance to get hurt again. But at this point, do you feel more confident with Nate coming back or with us getting Juke? Nick, what do you think?
I feel more confident with us getting Juke. I think that Nate's draft stock could be, and I think that process starts Friday. I think it's possible that I think the one thing that might actually push him over, even if he's like an edge lottery pick, is the fact that he got hurt and like the possibility that he might get hurt again.
Like us.
Like us. Yeah. So I think he's I think Jeff's read's totally right. I think he absolutely could come back. But I feel better about Juke because I just don't think he's going in the NBA draft. I just don't think he'll be a high enough pick. And I think he's going to go to college somewhere. I think that our previous recruitment of him has us ahead in that process. And Rick's clearly showing like he's basically walking in and saying, what do you want to come here? And I guess Danny White's giving it to him because we're like 5 for 5 so far on the guys he's wanted. So I just feel better about Juke for those reasons.
Yeah, not to leave Nate too quick because I'm with Nick. I think Juke's more likely. There is a paradigm for this. I'm kind of the old head, but Blake Griffin did this same thing. He was projected to be a late lottery pick, I think his junior year, maybe his sophomore year, stayed another year, became the number 1 pick in his draft class. Mm-hmm. If I'm Nate, or what I hope somebody is telling Nate is, let's take out a huge insurance policy against injury. You love Tennessee. Let's go back, try to win a national championship, and then go into the – I mean, really, you could be competing for number 1 pick status with your own teammate. Juke Harris could be good enough to become a contender, but, go make yourself the number 1 pick this year. And let's see how that goes.
Does Juke have the measurements to be a guard that goes like that early in the draft? I don't know. That's what I'm asking.
For him to do it, it would probably be one of those deals where the team with the number 1 pick needs the position. But that happens in a really weak draft class. If they start drafting for position more aggressively than they do in a loaded draft where you can just take, just take what's in front of you and develop it into whatever you want it to be, or, move your roster around once it matures.
Yeah.
So, I think he's got an outsider shot.
Sign me up for Juke and Nate on the same team. That's crazy. I mean, that would be insane. And I think that's like – this is way too early, but like if you did get both those guys, is it Final Four or bust? It's got to be, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
it's got to be. I mean, it's like if you don't make the Final Four, season failure, right? I mean, especially since you made it 3 straight Elite Eights. Like,
assuming there's not catastrophe and like everybody gets hurt, then like yes,
Marshall,
yeah,
right,
yeah,
exactly. I think so too.
Hey, real quick, I'm just curious what y'all think about this. It seemed pretty clear last year that Rick had taken Florida as the blueprint for what he wanted to do with this year's team. Let's go big guys. Let's have a ton of depth in the front court, whatnot. Mm-hmm. Does it seem to y'all like he's completely reversed with this team? It seems like
feels like he's doing Michigan now.
Yeah, we've loaded up on perimeter players.
It's just whoever wins the natty, he's just like, let's just try that.
Let's do that one now.
Yeah, I also wonder if there's like, is it possible that he just is taking the best players available? So like last year, the best players that he could get that were kind of obvious to get was like guys like Jalen Carey. When like this year, the guys that are most obvious to get are like Juke Harris. I mean, like who was better last year that you actually could have gotten than Jalen Carey? I don't know. Like, was there better bigs out there that we actually had a shot at?
Do you still have your eligibility?
Stop. Get out of here. Jalen Carey would put me in a blender, son.
I honestly, I believe the narrative that he was trying to replicate Florida's pattern. I really do. Okay. I did hear somebody, I listened to so many podcasts in the week, but somebody said or wrote that as people have started taking a more kind of Moneyball approach to the NIL era, that right now it seems like you can get more for your buck with perimeter players than you can with height.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, big players are the high dollar.
They're so rare. I mean, that's why Cade left. That's why all those guys jumped in the portal, all the big guys every year. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, JP Estrella, Cade Phillips, Jalen Carey, those guys' value has never been higher than it is right now for, the landscape of college basketball. And that's also why I think that's why they jumped in. Like Nick said, that's also why we couldn't retain them, is because you can't it's easier to pay to get those guys to come to you than it is to pay to get those guys to stay. And that's why we lost them. That's right.
It actually seems to me like it's cheaper to retain your own player. But
I think
maybe not. Sorry. I mean, but that's what it looks like to me. Jalen Carey said, if the money, if they want me back, I'm coming back. And so I would just love to know. I'm just interested in this. I'd love to know like the salary cap we're working with, because here's the thing, man. You pick one of those three. Clearly, we had the money to retain one of them,
Yeah.
but we didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so something else is going on there, and I'm just fascinated by it. Not because I think I could do better or whatever. I just kind of like that side of the game. So, what is it motivating them to say, we'll wipe the deck? You know, Dwayne Brown's like our most efficient production per price player. We'll keep him.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll go out and spend a bank ton on a ton of different transfers. Like, I keep up with UNC, and the UNC fans are all complaining about how much money Tennessee has to spend. We're clearly rolling it out. And it seems pretty clear also that we didn't value putting it towards Estrella, Phillips, or Carey.
Do you think it's just the fact that those guys were more expensive than Miles Rubin and Rick wanted to spend a bunch of money on guards?
See, that I mean, I've already kind of laid out, like, it looks to me like he's decided perimeter oriented, and that could be strategic because of Michigan, although Michigan had a 7-footer, or it could be that this is where the smart money is. Like, when Bill Belichick was like, what we're going to do? We're going to build around tight ends, 2 on the field at the time, and a slot receiver. Like, that was really interesting that he kind of found the margin that nobody else was exploiting. I would love to have access to the information for college basketball.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, that's all great stuff, guys. Yeah, I think it's obvious that Rick Barnes is willing to do whatever he thinks gives him the best chance to win. And if that means he's copying other blueprints, or if that means he's saying goodbye to players he wouldn't necessarily normally say goodbye to, I'm just glad that it seems like he really is trying to do whatever he can to win one game more, to get one game further in the postseason. And I mean, I'm glad to be in this position.
And White is backing him. Like, apparently the Haslams or somebody else is putting bukus of cash in. I do think like the funniest version of this is that Rick's gotten to a stage of his career where he can do what we do when we buy a new sports game. And for a little while, you're like, I'm going to play with a team that throws the ball all over the field and runs the score up. Oh, yeah, I'm a little bored with that. I'm going to go play with a team that runs the ball 3 clouds and 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Like, he can just kind of shuffle and see what he wants to do this year. It's kind of humorous.
Yeah, for sure. And then the last bit of latest news is just update on baseball. So the Vols lose their weekend series last weekend to Ole Miss, 2-1. We avoided the sweep with the Sunday win, so that was big time for us that are tracking wins. A lot better to be coming out of those first 2 weekends when we're kind of tracking those wins with 4 wins instead of 3. That's a big difference. The Vols also beat Lipscomb last night in the midweek game 14-4. And we haven't talked about midweek in a couple weeks just because I think we're all kind of burnt out on talking about Tennessee dominating midweeks and then looking sometimes great and sometimes terrible on the weekend. But I do think that there's some things to be talked about from the midweek this week. And then the last bit of latest news for baseball is the Vols take on Alabama starting tomorrow night. It's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday series instead of a traditional Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So make sure you mark your calendars for that and you're tuned in tomorrow night.
Third Saturday in April.
Third Saturday in April, baby. So let's jump into it, guys. Let's talk about baseball, unless we have any other basketball news before we move on.
Yeah, I meant to throw in the chat earlier and I forgot. We're hosting Kennesaw State transfer forward Braden Liu. He's 6'9". He averaged almost 11 points, 5 boards, and shot 45% from the field. So there may be some post depth coming in at some point. I mean, Rick hasn't really let guys get off campus once they get on.
That makes sense because they got 3 spots left. And my guess is that they're
Juke, Nate.
Yeah. Yep. My guess is they're adding that depth piece, thinking they'll get Juke, and they're just going to hold Nate's spot until they don't.
Yep. I would read it the same way. And they need – I mean, I'll just be honest with you. I'm a little stressed going into the season with 2 competent post players, assuming Braden Liu is competent, with him and Dwayne Brown. But it looks like that's what they're going to do.
And Miles Rubin. Don't forget Miles Rubin.
Yeah. It would also be fun to see like a small ball Tennessee
4 out, 1 in. Shoot it up.
That would be kind of fun. Yeah, I could have fun with that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That would be a fun team. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Braden Liu. Is Kennesaw State good?
I have no idea. He started 34 games for them. The only thing I know about them is that they're like one of those programs that's in and around Atlanta, and so
Right.
they kind of catch the leftovers from Georgia and Georgia Tech, and that's not terrible, you know.
No. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right, very cool. So baseball, Vols lost their series to Ole Miss last weekend. Game one, we dropped it 7-4. Game two, you lost 8-1. We'll start with the losses, and then game three, you won 13-5. We'll start with the losses first, and then we'll come back to the win. Nick, game one, game two, biggest concern. What stood out to you? Go ahead.
Biggest concern. I think my biggest concern is still the sporadic hitting.
Mm-hmm.
But that was, I definitely, and especially I think the hitting was the problem on Saturday because
Yes.
I think Coons pitched really well, arguably his best start, and still arguably not the best pitcher that day.
Yeah.
But still, he gave you plenty, gave you enough to win that game. It was close down the stretch until it wasn't. And then, so that's my biggest overall, probably concern is just the sporadic hitting. I mean, I think pitching probably got you on Friday, but you probably should still be scoring more than 4 runs if you want to beat Ole Miss. So,
Yeah. I mean, Friday was kind of shades of like the beginning of the season in Tennessee because it's like you had the lead in that game. And when I think we did Reese hit a solo shot, right? So it was 1-0. Um, and so like you never felt like we were in control of that game because you knew like we need to score more, we need to score more. Obviously,
well,
you ended with four.
Mac was getting tagged.
Yeah, you knew that 4 runs wasn't going to be enough to win. And to your point, like this, you hate to sound like a broken record, but this team just makes you be that way. And that, like, the problem is still situational hitting, like you said, and until they fix it, like you're just not going to win games.
Yeah,
Like
I mean
it's just
that's why they won the weekend before against Mississippi
right,
State is because they hit with 2 outs, and they didn't
right.
do that against Ole Miss. They had plenty of opportunities with guys on base, and couldn't push them over the plate. So
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, Friday in particular was, in a sense, it was more frustrating than Saturday because you felt like like with the early lead and like the way that, I mean, like you said, Mac was getting hit pretty good, but I mean, still, they scored less runs on Friday than they did on Saturday. So like, even though the like how it looked might have been worse than how like Coons or Appenzeller looked on Saturday, the runs say that you gave up less on Friday, and so
yep.
I left Friday. I felt like feeling that this team was the better team, honestly, Friday, and I just felt like you didn't get the hits when you needed them. Saturday, it felt like your pitching was probably better, but like we did not seem like we belonged in the field with Ole Miss at all when it comes to like being at the plate and how our approach was in that game. Nick, were you concerned at all on Saturday with Appenzeller like giving up the grand slam? I think he ended up giving. Was he responsible for like 6 or 7 of the 8 runs?
Most of the runs, yeah. I mean, but that
Yeah.
ball game was tied when he came in.
Yeah, right.
So, and he gave up most of the runs. It was concerning, for sure, because he's just been lights out. But on one of the podcasts I listened to this week, like, it's crazy that he got tagged for 6 or 7 runs, and his ERA in league play is still sub 3.
Yeah.
So that's just how good he's been so far. So, I
Yeah.
mean, you know that he was going to get hit at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's a freshman and he'd been lights out. Somebody's going to watch film. Somebody's going to figure something out. So you kind of figured that was going to happen at some point. So you just hope he learns from it. So I think it remains to be seen how big of a problem it is, because everybody gets hit at some point. So I don't think like the sky's falling on him. But it'll be interesting to see how he responds this weekend because it's really the first adversity he's faced.
Yeah. Jeff, did you have any thoughts on the two losses? Did anything stand out to you?
It looks to me as a novice that it's just more of the same problems we've been having all year, particularly with the bats. That's what I would have answered to. And I'm at a point now where it's kind of like, the basketball team managed to find another gear, but I kind of feel like this team is what it is. So I was reading a tweet where somebody said, "Oh, Blaine Brown broke out in the midweek game. He's out of his hitting slump and all this." And I'm like,
yeah, against the midweek game against sub 500 Lipscomb.
Yeah,
right. It's a Cope Harder kind of tweet.
The pitcher like beamed 4 guys in the first couple innings.
Yeah, let's not get too ahead of ourselves because I have some notes on Blaine Brown that I do want to share. So we'll table that midweek discussion for a second. But just the hitting mainly, Jeff. Like you just feel like it's kind of more of the same.
Yeah, it feels like, if it was a football team or stuff we said last year, the defense did enough. The pitching's clearly doing enough. You're being let down in the box, and I just don't have much hope it gets fixed.
Yeah, it feels similar to that football team too in this way. Baseball is also obviously a complementary sport. I mean, every sport has a complementary aspect in some sense, and it just seems like they can't very often get their pitching and their hitting together on the same day, and they're just so that that just seems like it's kind of been the deal. You'd like to think that you could win that game on Friday, even on a day when you're having a bad hitting day. Maybe you could hold them down and find a way to win, but
yeah. I mean, the biggest problem on Friday, like you already kind of mentioned, but it's like it was just an unfortunate night for Landon Mack to finally start to give up not just hits, but like hits that mattered, like hits with runners in scoring position and situational hitting that negatively affected the scoreboard. Because if you make it later, like I think Matt came out in the 7th in that game. If you make it to that point with the lead, you're bringing in Appenzeller, and you're probably going to win. And the fact that you didn't have the lead at that point because Mac didn't hold them down enough or you didn't hit enough, like it's just you just felt like this team was right there to putting themselves in a great chance to win. If Appenzeller's pitching on a Friday, all that just points to you're probably going to win. Because that means he's coming in with the lead, and him with the lead, you just feel pretty good about that.
Yeah. And that's why this weekend to me felt a little different than like the Vandy and the LSU weekends in that it kind of felt like, I mean, baseball just has this aspect where it was like it just wasn't your weekend, right? Like your pitching just was a little off. The hitting's consistently been a concern, but it felt a little more like that's baseball than it did the total collapses that we've seen before. So
yeah. And I mean, I don't think there's too much to be said about Saturday. Obviously, the situational hitting got you again, but Saturday again, like I said, was the game where you just felt like you're not competing with this team right now. Like you're just not even not even worthy of winning this game. I didn't watch Friday. I had to watch highlights, but Saturday I did watch. And I know we were talking a little bit about it, Nick, but there was a couple moments in the game where Tennessee had a chance to really put up some runs and shift the game. And I remember after saying, we didn't, we struck out or, fly out, whatever, and you don't convert those runs, you were just like, that's it. We're cooked. That's the game. And that was so true. Like, and I think this team feels that, I think when they feel those moments
of head, for sure.
Yeah. Like when they are in a situation where they could drive in some runs and they don't, I think it negatively affects the entire lineup. I think they're very mental. And again, it's kind of twofold. It's like, one, if you're going to be a mental team, then either you've got to have some guys who are just stone cold guys who don't think about that stuff and can just rise to the occasion anyways. You've seen that in Tennessee's, program under Tony Vitello. And then, so either that, or you got to have at least one or two guys who are just like, I don't care what the situation is, I'm going to step up and be the guy. And you don't have either the dog or the kind of leadership that you need, or you don't have the kind of mentality that you need. But either way, you can't let one guy not getting the hits in the situation that you need to get the hits affect your next at bat and having you thinking, outside of what your approach is. And Saturday.
To that end, I think an important piece could be that Stone Wallace should be the leader of this team at this point. Mm-hmm. And his coming back and hitting the ball consistently already, I'm hoping brings some kind of mental stability that they haven't had, because he's been a leader on the team before. He's good in the dugout. And, you'd like to think that maybe his coming back will settle the young guys down a little bit. I don't know if that'll be
Yeah.
true, but you'd like to see that happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not
Yeah,
to
go ahead,
keep
Jeff.
us on that point every episode, but Tony Vitello built this roster.
Mm-hmm.
Tony Vitello's teams fed on swagger.
Mm-hmm.
This team doesn't have it, and I don't know where they manufacture it. I don't even think Stone's personality is the kind of guy. What's the I can't believe I'm forgetting the name, but the guy who's in San Francisco with Tony.
Drew Gilbert.
Yeah, I mean, if you had a Drew Gilbert type, I think this team would probably be better than his singular addition. Like, it would be better than the sum of the parts, but they just don't have that guy.
The most swagger you have is probably Coons.
Yeah.
But he's a starting pitcher, right?
Yeah.
So you don't have an everyday player on the field. I think Levi Clark could be that guy if he'll keep hitting and gain some confidence.
Or Blaine Brown. I think Blaine Brown's got that, you know, but
do you think he's, I don't know, man. That guy seems like he is in a funk of all funk.
No, yeah. I think Blaine Brown, when he's successful, is that type of guy. But the thing that's different about him and Drew Gilbert, it's like Drew Gilbert is the type of guy who could be 0 for 4 and he's still going to talk crap, because he's just that guy. Blaine Brown is like, when things are going good, he's going to be that guy. But when things are not going good, it seems like he's going to be kind of down and whatnot. Which to me, I mean, I don't really like that. If you're going to be the guy that talks crap, just be that guy all the time. Like, if that's what helps you play good, then just be like that. Like, think of like Jawan Jennings. Like, Jawan Jennings was on some subpar Tennessee football teams, and he was still like that player that played with the edge. I mean, he's, scoring touchdowns on Vanderbilt and like setting the ball in their chest and like, stepping over guys. I mean, that's who Jawan Jennings was.
Stomping on their ankles.
Yeah. I mean, that's Jawan Jennings. Like, that's who he is. It didn't matter how good or how bad Tennessee was. He was going to be that guy. And you see that in his NFL career too,
Yeah. Let me ask you, I don't know the sport well enough. With Jawan Jennings, when things aren't going well in terms of him getting to score touchdowns or make big catches, he could still get out there and plow somebody into the dirt blocking for a runner. What does a baseball player have? Like, if you're not hitting, and fielding seems like such a sporadic occasion that is coming to you unless you're playing shortstop or something like that. What do you have to be like, okay, or in basketball, your shot's not dropping, you just start fighting everybody for rebounds. Like, there's a way to contribute.
Yeah.
Where do you do that in baseball?
Well, Nick, if you want to jump in on this, you can. But where I would start is just obviously like it goes straight to the mental game. Like, physically, you're right. There's nothing you can substitute for that physically, but mentally, right? You can be, talking to guys about the pitches that you've seen or the tendencies you're noticing in the pitcher. Obviously emotionally, you can still be upbeat and be positive and be trying to like encourage guys and stay locked in the game and not letting it.
Yeah, you gotta have a guy in the dugout that's telling the guy on deck, whatever he does doesn't matter. Get locked in, get ready to hit. Like, because it is such a mental game, and you're sitting there in the dugout and you're just thinking. So you have to have somebody in the dugout that's a vocal enough leader and respected enough that they're like they have gravitas and they command respect enough that they're keeping everybody mentally locked into the game. And they're just acknowledging those things that we're acknowledging, which is like, we have to be able to find a switch to flip and not get down just because a guy gets out. Like, it's just next man up. Man up.
Yeah. And that's what's crazy about Tennessee baseball, man. Like, we haven't given this guy a lot of airtime, but like, it's quick. We're always quick to mention guys like Drew Gilbert or Jordan Beck when it comes to things like this. Obviously, Christian Moore is probably the most talented player that you've had offensively in the last however many years. But like, a guy who's low key, the exact type of player we're describing, who is less talented, hasn't had a great pro career, is like Max Ferguson, right? Like, Max Ferguson was on the teams before we won the national championship. And, he hit a huge 3-run bomb to walk off Arkansas in 2021 or 2022. I can't remember exactly the year. And Max Ferguson was like a second baseman, right? So Max wasn't the type of guy who was going to be out there hitting tanks. I mean, he literally came up in that situation. It's the walk-off, right? And he's like, hey, coach, should I bunt, right? Like, that's the type of player he was thinking, like, oh, should I bunt to move these guys over, right? And that's where the infamous like hit it over the effing fence quote comes in, and then Max Ferguson hits a bomb. But Max Ferguson was like that type of guy where it's like, even though he's not going to be your main producer, he clearly was a leader of that team and had the confidence to step in the box and have a good at bat, no matter what was going on with the hitters around him, no matter what was going on with his game specifically. He was going to set his mind on the task at hand and not let anything else affect that. And it just seems like Tennessee either has the guy that can do that that's not tapping into it yet. Maybe he's not mature enough. Maybe he needs to be called upon to do that. Maybe somebody needs to get in his ear and encourage him in that. Or that guy's just not on the team, and you've got to just get somebody like that. And maybe Stone is that guy, but Stone's not, at least from what I can tell, not a super vocal guy. He's not going to be the guy. Like, he's not a rah-rah guy. He's more of just like a
head
even
down,
kill,
do your job.
Yeah, I'm going to do it right, even when nobody else does kind of guy. But you only get one at bat out of every 9. So, like, you've got to, when you're not hitting, this is going back to your question, Jeff, you've got to be able to help your teammates. You have to be that kind of point guard type player, even when you're not on the floor or not on the field in the case of baseball. And I don't know. I'm sure that there are guys doing that, and we just don't see it. We don't hear about it. But clearly it's not been effective.
I imagine it's hard particularly for a baseball team too. I think this is easier in basketball. I think it's hard for a baseball team when you have so many guys that are new for somebody to ascend in that way.
Yeah.
Particularly when everybody's kind of had their moments of struggling. That's why I think if I had to pick somebody, my best bet is like if Levi Clark can start hitting the ball, that he could become that guy.
Yeah.
Because even last year as a freshman, he had a bit of swagger that he doesn't have this year.
Yeah.
And I mean he hit two 2-run bombs on Sunday, and he hit another one, at least one on against Lipscomb. So, maybe he can carry that into this weekend and find confidence and
how much time do they have to find whatever they're needing though? What's the current status on how much you got to win to get into the postseason?
Yeah, so we're at 4 wins now. So that's a good segue, Jeff. We'll kind of talk about the win, and then we'll jump into the midweek game. So Tennessee has 4 wins through the 2 weekends since we kind of laid out that they need 9. So on paper, right, you literally could have won both these series 2-1, 2-1, and you'd be in the same spot. So that's why it's like, obviously it sucks that you lost the series, but that Sunday win is a huge deal.
It is.
Because on paper, like I said, you literally could have won both those series. So you're already basically almost halfway there. You're 4-2 through 6 games.
2 weeks ago, if you'd have said, when we get done with Mississippi State and Ole Miss, we're going to be 4-2, you'd have been like, sign me up right now.
Yep. Absolutely.
I'll take that all day. So they got to find 5 more. And they've got tough series ahead. But the next 2 weekends, I think this weekend is make or break again to get that 5. So,
I love y'all. Do you know how many times the phrase "this is a must-win series" has been said on this podcast?
It's true. Well, because you won the last must-win series, so now it's the next one. If you'd have lost that one, then you'd eliminate. You're just pushing your chances farther down the road.
Yeah.
So because you went 4-2, if you'd have gone 2-4, then I've been saying there's no chance that you're going to be able to go 500 against the teams that you have left. But at this point, you have to win. You have to find 5 wins. So if you can
over 12 games,
over 12 games. So if you can win the series against Bama, then you've got to find 3 games, and you've got 9 games to do it. And you've got Kentucky at home. And I know Kentucky's been a thorn in our side, but they have no business losing that series the way
Kentucky's on the road. Kentucky's on
the road. But nevertheless, they just have no business losing to that Kentucky team.
Yeah, so. And that's the thing. Like, I agree that this weekend is must. I think it's more. Obviously can't get swept. Like, if you lose the series and you win 1 game, you still have a pretty good shot. If now the pressure is on because you really do need to sweep Kentucky to feel really good about your chances.
Yeah, because you'll have to win 1 against Texas sure at that point,
and 1 against Oklahoma. Yeah,
who's been surprisingly good. So if we don't win 2 this week, I will not feel good about it from here on out. So if we win 2, I think it's almost a lock that they make the playoffs.
I agree. I mean, if you win 2 this weekend, you literally only have to not get swept in the last 3 series, and you're fine. If you win 1 game against Kentucky, 1 game against Texas, 1 game against Oklahoma, you're in. But obviously, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think this weekend is truly must win in the sense that if you don't win the series, you have no shot to make it, especially with as up and down as this team has been. I would not be shocked if they lost 2 out of 3 to Bama, but then they swept Kentucky.
and then went and swept.
Yeah, like that
Yeah.
wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, it's true.
But I think the best way to go about it, and the way that you feel, most likely to actually get there is by winning 2 this weekend. So I agree with that. Yeah. But yeah, Sunday's game was encouraging, right? Because you saw a lot of guys hitting the ball. You mentioned Stone already. Like, Stone's back, and he hit well on Sunday. Levi Clark had a great game on Sunday. I mean, even when he hit 2 home runs, but even the balls that he also had a double, right? Like,
Yep.
It's not like he was just hitting bombs. Like, he was spraying the ball, and
Yep.
his entire approach just looked really, really good. And so I don't. It's just you have no idea. Like, if he continues doing that, then yeah, I feel great about the lineup. I feel great about our chances to win these games. But you just have no guarantees that he's going to keep doing that because of how hot and cold this whole team's been.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So did the Sunday win, did that influence your takeaways from the series in any way? Or were you still just like, yeah, we let one get away? Like, what did it, like, walking away from the Ole Miss series, knowing that you got one, what was your kind of main takeaway? Nick, you go ahead.
Yeah, I have two. I have mixed emotions about it because you felt like you were so far ahead after you swept Mississippi State that if you could win the Ole Miss series, you were just playing with house money almost from there on out. And so, but I also feel the way that I mentioned earlier, which is that if you told me we won 4 out of 6 against those 2 teams, I'd have been thrilled. And so winning that game to me was huge because if you'd have told me that we went 3-3 in those series, I'd have been like, okay, well, we won 1 against Mississippi State and then we took 2 against Ole Miss and we're still in the hunt. So I just still feel pretty good about the overall picture. But it's like you said, it's just hard not to be disappointed with how up and down they are. They can't – the times when they've been able to flip a switch and get the hits that they need, they can't sustain that. And so that's just a frustrating thing to deal with, and it sounds like being a Tennessee fan. So
yeah. There's some kind of sick piece with, like, it would almost be easier to deal with if you knew that, hey, this team's just not very good and they're not going to win a lot of games. There's like some like peace in that, and the fact that this team has the talent and they look great in some series and look bad in some series. It's just the hardest road to hoe as a Tennessee fan.
It's like watching the basketball team this year. It's exactly the same.
Yeah, it just feels like at every turn the University of Tennessee athletic program, whether it's basketball, baseball, football, they're just making the fans work hardest to get any sort of satisfaction out of their teams. It's just a constant thing.
Yeah, we were so spoiled for so long with baseball.
Yeah.
You can come on over to Jeff Wrightland, where I said it several weeks ago. I think this team is rebuilding. I think they're mid. You already heard me talk about how I'm reading this narratively. So I think they're a middle-of-the-pack team that's rebuilding. Narratively, it makes me think Mississippi State isn't as good as maybe we thought we did when we beat them. So then when they go in and the bats are alive on Sunday, it looks to me like, oh, yeah, the series is decided. So now they're not locked into mental paralysis and they can hit better.
Yeah.
And it's sort of not quite a midweek game, but kind of a variant of a midweek game where we're not really competing at this point. The series is locked up. We can feel a little bit more free. I just think this is a team that, I don't know, guys. I hope you're right, and I hope it all comes around.
I don't know that I'd super disagree with that. Like, I think that they are probably mid as an SEC team this year, and that's why I always said I thought a super regional was their ceiling. But like a mid SEC team should make the playoffs. And so to me, that's kind of like, that's the goal right now, is to get through the dogfight of these series and get to the regional and see what you can do in the regional. So I don't necessarily disagree that like it's a rebuild in some sense, or at least a retooling. I don't think it's like a massive overhaul because I still think there's a lot of talent on the team. It's just not the talent that we've had the last several years. So
the narrative that I'm trying to talk myself into, because I want Elander to be successful, is that Tony screwed up roster construction. Josh will rebuild the team in his image next year, and it'll turn out that we made a good hire.
Well, and they lost guys when Tony left, and they had to bring in new guys. So, I mean, there's aspects of that probably had some kind of effect. I mean, so I don't think it's.
This is catching you cold. Might be unfair. If they don't make a super regional, will you think the program, if it were Heupel, would we be saying that seats warming up? Or would you just say, like, this is he gets this year and then he starts getting evaluated?
Yeah, with it being his first year, I'd be like, it's not what I expected, but I'm just willing to wait and see what he can do building his own roster. I'm not going to be super black-pilled. I'll be much more black-pilled if they don't make the playoffs. I'll be in a bad place. But I think they make the postseason, see what they can do in a regional. If they're competitive in that regional, even if they don't make it out of it, I'll feel okay. Like he, I'll be willing to just wait and see, I guess. So,
yeah, I think I'm in this. Sorry, Jeff. I think I'm in the same camp. I mean, my goals, were a little higher. I thought I wanted to see this team make it to Omaha. I still think that's just like the running standard at Tennessee now with what you've built. So I'm not going to say that, like, if we lose in the regional or even if we lose in super regional, that I'm like happy with that outcome. But either way, I think not making a postseason with this roster is a disappointment.
Yeah,
and so I think
it's criminal. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that you definitely can evaluate Elander on that and say, like, hey, whatever happened, like the coaching clearly wasn't good enough, whether that be in roster construction, decision making, whatever avenue you want to take with that, the coaching wasn't up to snuff. If you don't make the postseason, like, that's just bottom line. Coaching wasn't up to snuff. But I just think the reality is with Elander, I think that he's going to be a good coach. It's just, is it going to be here? Does he have enough time to do it here? Does he have enough time to do it? Or is he going to do it somewhere else? I really don't see Elander being a coach who has a short career and can't find his footing anywhere he goes. I think he is a good coach. I think he's going to be a good coach. But I just think that he's learning on the job. And so part of his learning is right now he's learning how to push the right buttons and pull the right strings when he needs to. And at the end of the day, it's not all his fault, but it is all his responsibility. And so he's failing if you don't make the postseason, he's failing at doing his job as well as he should do it. And you're going to have to see improvements. So,
well, I did see that ladies golf won something that's important to ladies golf, and so
the SEC championship.
I think we can all be thankful for Danny White's leadership and the way he's allocating resources.
Everything's cool.
Yeah, everything's cool. Yay!
Okay. Yeah. I mean, congrats to the girls. Like, that's awesome. SEC championship. Like, that's cool.
Yeah, it's great.
So, yeah, in the midweek game, the Vols played Lipscomb yesterday. Not a very good team, but the Vols do win 14-4. So, run rule victory. You do what you're supposed to do in a midweek game. That's your second straight game scoring 13-plus runs. So the reason I mentioned that, obviously, it's not necessarily impressive to score that many against Lipscomb, but for a team that's been inconsistent, I do think it matters that you're scoring. At least they're doing what they're supposed to do, and so I was glad to see that.
Can we say about that game too that they scored 6 in the first, and UAB came right back and scored 4, and they didn't fold up. Whatever.
Yeah.
Sorry, what did I say?
UAB. It's all right. We're going to talk about UAB.
That was Bama. Yeah. So they didn't fold up against Lipscomb, and they didn't seem to get the mental queasiness that they have gotten in past games. And maybe it's just that they're like, okay, it's Lipscomb, so we're remaining mentally locked in. But the flip side is, like, Bama's also been up and down like us, and they just got housed by UAB. Like at home, 11-2. I mean, it's embarrassing. So,
yeah. The thing about Blaine Brown that needs to be mentioned in this is, so you guys kind of already said, like, Blaine Brown looked good in the midweek game, and kind of obviously, like, doesn't really mean that much. He should look good against bad teams, right? But I do think that there's something to be said about the fact that, and so I would love to hear you guys kind of argue with me about this if you disagree, or just hear your thoughts. But at the end of the day, when you are a hitter like Blaine Brown, who is wanting to feast on a fastball, hit the ball out of the park, a power pitcher like you would see in the SEC is the type of pitcher that Blaine Brown, at his best, would be more comfortable hitting than a midweek guy who's throwing a lot of junk and is not throwing very hard. So I say this to say this is kind of a nuanced take here, but it was impressive to me that Blaine Brown, with the types of struggles that he's had, was able to hit the ball the way that he did against a team as bad as Lipscomb.
Opposite field. He was letting it get deep.
Right. It's not like he was, it's not like he was just pulling the ball and, hitting it down the line. He was waiting back. He was hitting the ball at opposite field home run, opposite field double. So to me, that communicates a change in his discipline, or at least his discipline at the plate entirely. And so I do think that there's something there. I don't want to put too much on it because it's still, you got to see it in SEC play. But it does communicate something. Like it should be harder, in theory, for a player like him to hit well against a team like that. And the fact that he was able to adjust and do it makes me think that maybe there is a hope that if he can carry that approach, that discipline to the plate tomorrow against Alabama, then he could maybe get out of the funk that he's in. I think they said I heard he was like 2 for 30 in his last 30 at bats, and before the midweek game. And so the fact that he was able to kind of snap out of that against a team that wasn't throwing hard, I think is almost more challenging at times than it is against a good team. What do you guys think about
that? Nick, you go ahead.
I agree that I noticed that he hit those balls to opposite field. And I also agree, my high school baseball coach used to say you can't hit pus. So, and what he meant by that, obviously, is that it's hard when you face hard pitching. I think that's why Kirby Connell was always pretty good for Tennessee, is because you got Chase Dolander throwing 95, and then Kirby comes in, he's throwing a fastball 82, and his curveball is 71. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just so drastically different that the slower pitching is actually more difficult to hit. So, given what you said, that there's a guy that's not as good a pitcher, you're not really scouting this guy. You're just sitting back and waiting for a good pitch, and he's driving it the opposite way, meaning he's trying to be patient and wait, which makes me think that could be promising. Like you said, it's Lipscomb. You don't put too much stock in a midweek game. But, I mean, he's not really been doing that in midweek games for the last month. So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm skeptical, man. The kid who goes out and beats up on the middle school team at recess. Okay, cool. I'm glad you found your mojo. That being said, as I say all the time, y'all know the sport infinitely better than I do. And so I hope you're right.
Yeah. I mean, I would say the odds are in your favor, Jeff. It's more likely that he gets into the high leverage moments this weekend and he looks like the same player he has looked like, just because he hasn't shown a lot of discipline. But I just, you don't want to write it off completely. Maybe it is something, I don't know. There's just no way to know. This is why
this is the quintessential Vols experience. You just try to find a way to have hope. And so I can't hate on it, man.
I have it, baby. I believe.
Yeah.
Super regional coming your way.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the midweek game.
Boys, I'm not going to be shocked if we win 16 or 17 games and host a regional. I'm just telling you right now.
It could happen.
Absolutely.
I mean, I wouldn't bet on it, but it could happen. Yeah, that's
we're
pretty much
We're going to get Nate and Juke, and we're going to host a regional, and we're going to have a quarterback in the fall, and
I'm out on having a quarterback in the fall. I was with you until you said that.
And we've got the most dominant ladies golf team that's ever been seen.
We're going to have a deep cornerback and linebacker room. That's it.
And a great athletic director, and yeah, it's just all roses.
No, it's not all roses. I'm trying to be realistic here about the things that I feel good about and things I don't.
Oh, man.
I feel good about it all, buddy.
Danny White sucks, and so is our QB room. But
everything's cool. Let's go.
Our baseball team's going to make the playoffs.
I'm Mr. Sunshine.
Most negative Vols fan I've heard.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
I've heard tell.
There have been many rumors flying around about Jeff Wright. We will neither confirm nor deny them here.
What's the William Faulkner line? A tale told by an idiot full of sound and fury signifying nothing.
Who's the idiot?
No comment. Not for public consumption.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, weekend preview. Let's get into looking ahead. So the Vols host Bama this weekend. Again, that series, when you're listening to this, will be tonight, Friday night and Saturday night. It's Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Bama, as Nick kind of already mentioned, is coming off of a losing weekend at Texas and a midweek loss against UAB.
Two losing weekends in a row, I think. I think they lost Series 4 Texas
Couldn't
as well.
happen to a better school.
Yeah, so fun fact about the UAB baseball program, they are coached by Casey Dunn, who I used to coach his son in rec league baseball. Fun fact about that one.
All these connections.
Shout out to Sam Dunn, living in the Birmingham area. But yeah, so Casey Dunn, good baseball coach. He was the coach at Sanford when I was in school, and now he's at UAB. Yeah, UAB's a good team. I mean, they're sneaky. Like, I think Bama losing to UAB is much different than like if Tennessee would have lost to Lipscomb. It's a little bit different, but the fact how they lost is what's crazy. As Nick already mentioned it, 11-2 was the final score in that game, and like Nick said, I think they have lost 2 straight weekends. Is Bama reeling? Is this Bama team not very good? Are they coming in down? What do you think, Nick?
I think they're down. I think that I don't know how much that they are reeling, but they're definitely struggling. I mean, they have one of the lowest batting averages in SEC play, second worst in the conference right now, I think. And so I actually am getting a little bit into my picks for this weekend, but I actually think if the starting pitching has a good bounce back weekend that we win this series. I think this is one of the few series that they can win a couple games and not hit lights out. I think they'll have to hit better from here on out, but I actually think they can get by this weekend if Landon Mack and Tegan Coons are both, if they're both good this weekend. So they're struggling hitting. They have pretty good pitching. But I mean, I like our pitchers. And so, I think that they're inconsistent at the plate. Defensively, they're really bad. Justin LeBron, who has been at Bama for a while, is like kicking it all over the place. So,
yeah, I mean, he's a great player. He's clearly not having a very good year for his standards.
Well, down from his previous years, but you'd still like to have him on your team. I mean, he's a good player.
Yeah, he's a stud. He's a stud for sure. Yeah. So, are you more or less confident that we're playing at home? The reason I ask this question is because Tennessee's been much better on the road than they have been at home this year.
Sure.
And Bama also seems a little bit better marginally on the road than they are at home. So, Jeff, hearing that, go ahead. What do you think?
Can I just note that here again, Danny White screwed up the baseball stadium by pushing the students way out into nowhere? I mean, like, everything about his administration frustrates me. Before I get into the specific question, I want to go back to the idea that Alabama is in a rough spot. Was the narrative going into the LSU series not sort of similar, that they were in a rough spot and that maybe they were primed for us to take advantage of it? And it turned out that we were their kind of get right series. And
that you're saying the narrative with LSU,
yeah,
right? Yeah. Well, I remember you mentioning that. I mean, LSU definitely was not as good as we thought they would be, and they still aren't. I mean,
they've kind of been like Tennessee, higher expectations, and they've still kind of been up and down. They've not been very good.
Yeah, so I say that to say, Jeff, like, I think there's parts of that narrative that are true, but I wouldn't say that since LSU's played Tennessee, they've looked a lot better, right? It's not like they've gotten better since that series.
And Bama's kind of been the opposite, where Bama wasn't expected to be as good as what they started out, winning a few series to start the season, and then the last 2 weeks have just been catastrophic for them. So it's hard to know if they can bounce back or if they're falling off a cliff. So
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yeah. But no, that's a good point, Jeff, about the student section, because I mean, we all know like what makes Tennessee sports across the board great is the fans, and like every school, every program says that, but anyone that's ever been to a Tennessee game knows what we're talking about, because whether that's as a fan or as an opposing fan, it's just different, you know. And there's other programs that have that as well. It's not like we're the only ones, but for a team that isn't able to get as good of talent, like in any sport, right? Like in football, we're not getting as good of talent as teams like Ohio State, Georgia, run down the list. In basketball, you're not getting as good of talent as the traditional blue bloods like Kansas, Kentucky, North Carolina, Duke,
Rest
go
in
down the
peace to
list.
Kentucky, by the way. They're
Yeah.
brutal in the portal this year.
Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah. And then in baseball, same way, right? You got teams like LSU, Texas, Miami, USC. These teams that are traditionally really great baseball schools, Florida, and there's more. But it's like Tennessee is not elite in any of those sports in terms of like talent acquisition, in terms of like being a blue blood powerhouse school. So what does set Tennessee apart, though, and what does level the playing field in most games, especially that are in Knoxville, is that the fans are 1,000% bought in, no matter how good or how bad the team is. And that's what makes being a Tennessee fan so great, is that you're surrounded by a bunch of people who care probably more than they should about the outcomes on the field. And the fact that Danny White doesn't seem to fully understand that the fans are really what make our athletic programs great is really infuriating. And yeah, I mean, baseball is a little bit different. Obviously, it's not inherently, it's just not quite as a environment driven sport like basketball and football are. But there is still an aspect of that, and you see it with schools like Mississippi State or East Carolina, where it's like their environment makes their team better. And I think Tennessee could be a program like that if they put more emphasis on letting the students be near the action, around home plate, wherever that might be.
And don't forget that he has compounded that by pricing out your most diehard fan who's like trying to do what he can to get to a game. Like it's it's compounding error. And, I know you said you're frustrated. I just think the guy wasn't ready for the job. I've said that 1,000 times. And I still don't think he's shown any evidence that he kind of knows where the problems are. And I just don't think he's catching enough responsibility for what he's done to the highest profile programs.
Yeah. I think it's a good point.
He's the worst.
So yeah, going back to the question though, do you feel more or less confident being at home? So Jeff, you kind of jumped on that different angle, but I know you're like, how do you feel about being at home? Does that help you feel more confident or not? Just feel the same either way. It doesn't matter.
I think one of our problems is mental toughness. And it seems like we lock up more at home than we do on the road. I don't know why. And so I don't think we have a home field advantage. If anything, I think they play a little freer outside of the confines. And so, it does not improve my confidence in the success of this series that they're at home.
Yeah. Nick, what about you?
I mean, that's a tough one. I guess I kind of feel like it's 50-50. I don't feel like it's making a huge difference this year. Feels like we're kind of a 500 ball club overall. Our best series so far was on the road. But Mississippi State's not been good at home. They've been really good on the road. So that's not like we're the only ones struggling with that. So I don't know.
Yeah. But like, that's the thing though. Like, yeah, we're like you said, our 500 ball club, but like think about, so yeah, you beat Mississippi State on the road. So it's easy to point to that and be like, well, see, look, we're really good on the road. But also like think back to the Georgia series, right? That was on the road. And though that one didn't go the way you wanted, none of us left that weekend feeling like
the sky was falling.
Yeah. Like Tennessee played tough in that series on the road, and they played with a toughness in that series that you didn't see. Even though you won the series against Missouri at home, that toughness didn't seem there. And obviously it doesn't have to be there as much against a team like Missouri because they're not as good. But go to the LSU series, right? Like that series is at home, and Tennessee doesn't. I don't know. There's just, I think Jeff I think you make a good point. Like it just seems like Tennessee this year in particular in baseball is playing with a type of looseness and edge on the road that they don't have at home. And so I'm not lying. Like, I think I would feel more confident about this series if it was in Tuscaloosa, just because of the way that we've seemed to play on the road. I remember looking like earlier this week because I knew that it was at home, but just like reminding myself it was, looking at the schedule and trying to preview, and I was like, I had the feeling, like, man, I wish this series was on the road, because I just feel like there's something about getting to hit first. Like, if this team could put up some runs quickly, what that would do for their confidence. A pitcher having a lead going into the bottom of the first, what that would do for their confidence. Like, it just feels like this team could be more successful within an in-game situation in a road environment than they are consistently at home. And I know they're inconsistent across the board.
All I'm hearing you say is confirming my theory that this team's going to make a super regional. We'll go 4-6 over the next 2 weekends. So, okay, let's win one against Bama and let's sweep Kentucky and Lexington next week. Yeah. And then let's find one. Texas or Oklahoma's on the road. Yeah. So let's get swept by Texas, and then let's win 1 or 2 against Oklahoma. Let's go to an away regional, and let's beat somebody in their own stadium. I love it. Let's do it. Sign me up.
I mean, that would be fun.
Sign me up for it.
That'd be fun. I mean, and Tennessee, obviously this team is not the same team as the 23 team, but you remember in 2023, like, you go on the road to Clemson, you lose the first game in that regional, and then you come back and you win that whole regional. Yep. I like, Tennessee has shown that being on the road for regional can still be something like that. That's an environment Tennessee can still win in. It's not like that's a death nail for this team. But I just, obviously you gotta, like, our park plays to our advantage because of how small it is. Like, we should be able to hit really well in our ballpark, and the fact that you're not is a little discouraging. But at the end of the day, you got to find a way to you got to find a way to win a game in this series. And if you win two, it's going to be very unlikely you don't make the postseason. So I do think there's a lot riding on winning the series, like you said, Nick, because it just makes the rest of your season easier, which, we'll get into predictions in a second. But so, yeah, let's go ahead and jump into predictions. Jeff, why don't you kick us off, man? What do you think is going to happen this weekend? What do you got Tennessee? How many games you got Tennessee winning? Which games do you think they win?
Yeah, I think this is another Sunday win. And
okay.
I think that just, again, I have to go at it narratively. You guys can analyze the X's and O's much more than I can. But narratively, they win. They play rough at home, true to form. Then they win one, and it kind of keeps your hopes alive going forward. So I'm assuming we're going to lose 2 and win 1.
Okay. Yeah.
I do have a follow-up comment after y'all's predictions, though.
Yeah. Jeff or Nick, go ahead.
Yeah. I do think we win this series. I think our pitching is going to bounce back, and I think we will. This is one of the rare series where we can out-hit our opponent. They have won or lost lots of 3-2 games, 2-1 games, 5-4. So I'm going to say that we win on. I don't think we sweep. I think we win Friday and Sunday.
Yeah. So, and just to clarify for listener,
sorry,
Jeff,
Thursday and Saturday. Yep. Thursday and Saturday.
Jeff has us winning Sunday, which means Saturday for this weekend, and Nick has us winning Thursday and Saturday. No, you're fine. You're fine. Okay. Has us winning Thursday and Saturday. So I kind of am just, I don't know. I think that Tennessee will win the series, but because I predicted us to lose against Mississippi State and we won, we swept. Predicted us to beat Ole Miss and we lost that series in one Sunday.
You're going to go with the narrative.
I'm gonna go just the opposite. So I'm gonna say, I'm gonna just tag right along with Jeff and say I think Tennessee loses Thursday, loses Friday, and finds a way to salvage it on Saturday. Now, what I want to follow up with on that, Jeff, and I want to ask you this question as someone who's kind of said multiple times, that maybe this team is only capable of winning that third game when the pressure's off. If you only win Sunday from here on out, that means you got 8 wins. So you're 1 away, or, if that's how it all played out, you wouldn't make the postseason. You would have been 1 away. But if you knew for sure Tennessee's going to win every Sunday game, every game 3 from here on out, that means you only have to find 1 more win in the next 4 series. Are you still not confident in this team making the postseason, Jeff? Do you feel like that puts you in a good spot, even if they only win game 3? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, 1 game should be attainable.
Yeah.
And like you said, with the talent that's on the roster, I think if you don't make the postseason, I guess I would say like you've got to take
It's
it.
catastrophic.
Yeah, it's not something that Elander can get a pass on. I don't know how to quantify that, but like now we've got real questions.
Well, yeah, to me, if you don't make a postseason, it's like you do that 2 years in a row and you're looking for a new coach.
Mhm.
And like Max
Yeah,
says, maybe he doesn't make postseason 2 years in a row, and then he goes to South Carolina because they suck and they're going to get a new coach at some point. Then maybe he goes to South Carolina and he's incredible.
Yeah.
So,
well, and that would actually kind of make sense with the mental dynamics of this team if it reflects the coach. Maybe Elander's just playing with too much pressure on his shoulders, and he hasn't quite figured out how to gut it out. That could be what's happening here. Because I do think the team drew off of Tony's personality and confidence and aggression.
yeah,
Elander
yep.
doesn't bring that to the table, although I think he does have a lot of gifts as a coach. So yeah, Mac, to your question, this team ought to be able to find enough wins to get in the postseason. If you don't, I don't know, you're just in a bad place as a Tennessee baseball fan.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, you got it here. Nick's got us winning Thursday and Saturday. Me and Jeff are on the Saturday win. We'll see what happens. The Thursday game is
Hey, Mac,
at 6. Yeah, go ahead.
The follow-up comment I wanted to give, I'll just throw this to y'all to tell me I'm an idiot. I almost feel like if this team doesn't win a game this series, but they are hitting the ball really well, and so they're losing games, by a run or two when both teams put up quite a bit of numbers, I almost think you feel it's almost as valuable as winning the series because then you have empirical evidence that maybe they've got the hitting monkey off their back and they can figure out the pitching rotation where they're playing complementary baseball. And I don't know if y'all think that's crazy, but if they were putting up 11 runs, 8 runs, 9 runs, and they lost by 1 or 2 runs, I think I'd almost feel like a little bit more juiced, even if we won 2-1 in the series.
Yeah. In that scenario, if we're scoring 11 runs and we're not winning, I am like super black pilled on that our pitching had the worst weekend they've had so far. Because I just don't think this.
You would think that's an anomaly, right? You would think like we can figure that out.
Well, not after this last weekend though. If they do that 2 weekends in a row, I would not feel great about it. So
yeah,
that's why I have to say I expect the pitching to bounce back. And see, that's why I feel pretty confident in this series. I expect the pitching to bounce back, and I expect us to just be able to score a few runs each night, and for Bama to keep struggling at the plate. Now, I could be totally wrong. They'd come out and beat us 15-2. That's baseball, but
Yeah.
that's just the way I feel about the series right now, the way it's framed up.
Yeah.
So if they come out and hit really well, I mean, regardless, I'll be like, man, this was our biggest. At that point, then it will truly be hope. I feel like most of my baseball takes so far of trying to reason through a lot of stuff. At that point, I'll be like, well, we hit the cover off the ball, and now I'm just hoping that somebody can figure out how to pitch for the last few weekends.
Yeah. Yeah, I think coming at it from a numbers perspective, if you in that scenario, if you were to look at the plate, put up a lot of runs, but lose all 3 games, to me it comes down to the simple numbers of the fact that means you went 4-5 through 9 games through the first 3 series that you had. You have 9 games left, and now you have to be above 500 in the last 3 series. So you have to go 5-4 to make the postseason. I would not feel as good about that, even if the hitting looked better, just because I think this team can go 4-5 in their last 9 games. I think they could win game 3s and find one more somewhere. I don't feel as confident as them having to win more games than they lose because they just haven't shown they can do that consistently SEC. So I think where I'm at with this weekend is you have to, if you don't win one, things are dark no matter how it plays out.
I think so too, because I think the pressure that they obviously feel in a weekend, like when they feel free when a Sunday's not a rubber match, one way or the other, right? They've either won 2 or they lost 2. They play really loose when there's not pressure. Now, that doesn't bode well for postseason play and all that. Like, I get it. But if the goal right now, if the first goal that's in front of you is just getting there, then if you look at the overall picture, and they know they're not dumb, they know the numbers as well as we do. So if they don't win any games this weekend, then the pressure that they feel every weekend, I think they're going to start feeling every single game, because it's like, man, now our back's up against it, and if
That's
we
a good
don't
point.
if we don't sweep, Kentucky, then we're cooked, because then we got to go to Texas, you know. So or then Texas is coming here. So
yeah, I mean, you absolutely have to win one game this weekend.
You have to win one.
Yeah.
You need to win two. So
Yeah. And here's the reality, man. I mean, based on Nick, your goal was you're like what you thought was a successful season was a super regional. What Jeff and I defined as this, I think Jeff was on board with me here. A successful season was Omaha, or maybe it wasn't.
No, I think based on what they were inheriting, Omaha should have been the goal.
Yeah, but so I think obviously all of this that we're discussing is like a step down from what we maybe had envisioned or hoped for this team. But at the end of the day,
not me, baby. I'm still right there. I knew they were going to take a step back. It's first year coach. He's never been a head coach.
You did, but you did say the goal or a successful season would be super regional.
Yeah, we're going to make one.
I hope we make one. I don't feel confident about making a super at this point. But
can't wait for it.
I hope you're right, man. I would love for you to be right. But what I was going to say is that I think that obviously all of those scenarios are like much lesser than what you had envisioned or hoped for this team. But at the end of the day, now it's just like, well, we're in the situation we're in. We got to do what it takes to get out of it. And that starts with winning one game this week. Like, you just have to win one. If you don't, you're in a really bad situation for the rest of the season. And the pressure is infinitely more on than it would have been. So I don't want to make too light of the fact that like this team is underachieving, but at a certain point, like, you've underachieved enough that now it's like, well, we just want you to do something better than what you're doing now. And I would love for that to be getting 2 wins against Bama if they can. So, the Thursday game tomorrow night, we play at 6 p.m. This game is on ESPN2, so a good game to catch. Always fun to watch Tennessee play Bama, any sport. I'm excited to watch us play. It's just great rivalry, great tradition, Southern culture. It's great. So make sure you tune in if you can. The Friday, Saturday games are on SEC Network Plus. So won't be able to get those on your cable TV if anyone still has that. But so that's kind of our games. And then I think that's it. Guys, any closing thoughts before we get out of here?
I don't give a dang about the whole state of Alabama.
Amen. Nick, go ahead and plug our socials, bud.
You can find us on X at Volatile_1998. You can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube. Check out the YouTube channel, and you can see some faces to go with these melodramatic and sweet voices that soothe you every weekend when the Vols inevitably underachieve and torment you for just one more day, and yet still have you hopeful that maybe, as Sam Beckett in Quantum Leap would say, that you could find your way home. So,
and with that, remember, it's terminal.